Hey everybody, it's Nick. For today's tutorial, we're going to be looking at a portal effect. Basically, I have this frame that I created that actually lines up with the size of the doors in my house, and the door is parented, to the camera, to the AR camera. And then when I get them lined up, if I tap my phone, you will see that it's going to generate a kind of fake room, and I can walk into it, and there's walls on the floor. There aren't any objects or anything in it. And then I can basically like exit right out into my dirty laundry and stuff in my house. Okay, so basically, uh, that what we're gonna do is build that scene in Unity. And it's kind of what you might consider like a portal effect, right? That we can kind of create like an artificial kind of architecture that is sort of like combined with our space. And so the way that I started that out is go ahead and made a model in Studio Max, and you can do this a couple different ways. What I think is probably the easiest way to do it, you're going to want the pivot for that thing, which is the kind of what's considered the kind of zero for it, to be basically at the base of the door. And so when I'm gonna make a door, I'm actually gonna make it like at the like basically at the main axis. I went in and I measured, my door, and I can't quite remember the dimensions right now. What I have is kind of a standard door, 80 inches by 32 inches, we have to be able to make sure we're modeling in meters when we're in Studio Max if we want things to export properly to Unity. So just go, if you haven't gone to Unity, go to Units Setup under Customize and just make sure that you're in metric. And then what I'm going to do is go to keyboard entry, and for the height, I'm going to go 2.032 meters, and for the width, I'm at 0.8128, and the length doesn't really matter, so I'm just going to go ahead and maybe make that, I don't know, like zero point 0.2 meters, something like that. I just need something as a threshold. And there's that thing. And then from there, what you do is go ahead and make your space. Um, yeah, I've got vertex snaps turned on. And then from there, you can just go ahead and make like a regular, whatever size room you want that to be, whatever height that is, whatever. So it's your portal. It's going to go into whatever that room is that you want. I'm just going to change the color of this really quick, just so that a little bit of contrast. And so I've got this kind of threshold, which is also the portal, and then I've got this kind of room, right? And the room is whatever you want to make that model. I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a rectangle. Go back to my snaps here. I'm going to kill this. Let's go to front view. I'm going to make a rectangle on the face of that. Go back there, and then I'm going to since I've got it, add a lattice modifier to it. And this, if you saw the video with the bathtub, this is a pretty similar technique that I made. I'm going to go struts, and I want it really thin. So we could call it 0.1 meters. And then it's going to give me something I can use later on to kind of create the actual kind of portal. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a box around even further. Let's see here. Yeah, just go ahead and make a box. But from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and edit mesh. So just snap to that, basically. Grab that front face from the polygon level. And if I've got my constraints turned on, go to options, constraints. I can grab that corner. Oops, I don't want to do that. I can kind of grab that corner in the Y and then drag that all the way to the face of that. And then from there, what I would do is just turn off snaps and just kind of eyeball this. What you basically want is just for the outer container to be larger than the room that it contains. And that's because that's going to hide the geometry. If we go back to Unity, you can see that we want that kind of invisible box. Okay, that's what that's going to be. So go ahead and do that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and for now and hide that object. Oops. What did I do with my other box here? Oh, I'm on the other side of it. Sorry. Gee whiz. There we go. There we go. Okay. Okay, so then I'm actually going to make the room. I'm going to click on the box, the big room box, and I'm going to go from the create panel to go to compound objects, go to Boolean. I'm going to go union. I'm going to say add operands. And now I've added these two together. So now they're actually one thing. And I'm going to go ahead and collapse that. I'm going to go ahead and convert that to a editable mesh. And then the last thing I'm going to do is add a normal modifier to it. So I'm going to go, actually one thing really quick. I'm going to delete the front of that. Oh, and then. Huh. All right. What? Interesting. Oh, you know what? I gotta go back. Sorry, friends. Hmm. Oh, because you can't undo that. Okay. I'm gonna quick make a correction here. Um, I'm gonna remake this. What happened was I booleaned it, but I didn't insert the box into the room far enough, and so basically I didn't get the two were connected, but there's not it didn't cut through it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Okay, and let's see here. Oops. I'm gonna delete that one. Okay. And I'm gonna do this, and we go back to this box here. That's embarrassing. Okay, and then throw on a edit mesh. Go here, and then just make sure that that is fully inside that room before I boolean it. No, that's the outside box. I don't want that. I want this one. Okay. Okie doke. Let's go back to create objects, compound objects, boolean, union, add operand. Okay, and then let's go ahead and collapse that. Okay, go back to the container, delete that. There we go. Now we're inside of that. Okay, and then the last thing we have to do is flip the normals. And the reason for this is because we want to basically look at the room inside out. We right now we're looking at the outside of the box. We want to make sure that the computer knows that it's kind of an inward facing space. So we're going to just go ahead and go flip normals. So add a normal modifier, and there you go. And you'll kind of notice, like if you don't do that, you can kind of see. Oh, my computer's doing something. Hang on a minute. Okay, so that actually crashed my computer, which is weird. Or at least crashed Studio Max. Good way to remind us to save as we're working, which I didn't do, so I had to rebuild it. So it's a little bit different than I showed you, but everything is as I had it. So I've got my edge here. I got my two things boolean. I was just gonna show you if I can here, if it doesn't kill me. Yeah, so this is what it looks like if I'm rendering it, with the things on the outside, and then if I flip the normals, if I go to normal modifier, you can see how that actually looks like the shadows inside the space. So that's the kind of thing we're looking for. Okay, so we're gonna do that, and I'm gonna go ahead and collapse that again. Go back to mesh. It's a good reminder that when you do that, that it does not allow you to undo that. So be really careful. I just did it because it's kind of a quick thing. You could always just go and add an editable mesh modifier to it. Since we're going to be exporting it as an FBX, and I want things to be meshes, I kind of jumped the gun there. But that's kind of a clean way to do it. That doesn't really hurt though. So okay, I've got my outside kind of box here, which is the kind of like occlusion mesh. And actually, I think about it. I actually want to cut a hole in this too. You look at this. I don't have a hole to look into it. So if I put something in front of there, that's gonna be a problem. So let me see if I can. And I can again. What you'd really want to do is kind of save that original primitive that you made and make a copy of it. That's kind of not a great thing anyway either. Um, let's go ahead. This is probably fine. Okay, so I'm going to do this. Now this one, what I want to do is I'm going to go into compound objects and I'm going to go Boolean subtraction and then add that. And then that'll actually should cut a hole in there. What did I miss there? Let's make sure that, okay, let's turn that off. Okay. Oh, yeah, I probably did something. Let's just make sure that we're only working with the objects. Okay, so take this one, go boolean, subtract, and cut that. It's not, oh, interesting. Actually, I want to trim, I want to kind of trim that. Yeah, it's taking it out as if it was, oh no, that'll work. Okay, so my mistake. Let's just go in. There's cleaner ways to do it, but let's keep this going. So we'll go edit mesh, and then I'll go ahead and click on this. Yeah, just basically like delete the threshold spaces, and it's good enough. All you gotta do is make a hole in it. Okay, and then let's turn back on our stuff here. Okay, so let's get rid of. Just accidentally deleted some surfaces there. Because I'm in polygon mode. Get out of there. Okay, I might have to clean that up a little bit. Nope. Okay, pretty good. Got the threshold here. Good. Got the space. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Probably could have used that. I guess that was still there. Okay. Anyway, fair enough. So these are the things you need. You need some kind of outside kind of piece to act as your frame, and then you need a uh, space with a normal split. This is your kind of room that the portal goes into, and it could be a much bigger space. It could be some kind of big outdoor space. It could be giant. I'm just doing this for the sake of this kind of demo here. And then the last thing you need is a kind of outer wrapper you're going to use to hide that geometry. Okay. And then what I would do in this case is go to the material editor. It's a really good idea to go ahead and just make a material for each one so that you can tell what's what. I always go into a scanline standard material. I'm just going to start and I'm going to call this like inside. And you can have many more materials. You could have a floor and you could have walls and textures and all that stuff. I'm going to go ahead and, for the sake of making things a little bit more clear, just make this kind of blue kind of space and apply that to this mesh. And then go ahead and just drag a copy of that, and I'm going to call this outside. And I tend to make this a really obnoxious color so that I can really tell that I have actually added the material that hides things, like the occlusion material. And that's just a thing I do. And then the last thing I'm going to do is turn this on. And then for these, I tend to go, for my frame, I'll go ahead and copy this. Let's just call this a frame. I tend to also make something that's very bright, not obnoxiously so, but kind of tick that as a yellow, and I'm going to go for 100% self-illumination, and that'll create kind of a bright frame piece. There you go. Okay, so those are the pieces that I am going to take out, and so from there I'm going to select everything, go to export selected, whatever. Let's just call this my portal room. And make sure that you are checking the boxes for embed media. Go ahead and keep the units as they are. The scale factor, Y up, FBX 2014-2015. You're going to go ahead and export that. Okay. And by now, I kind of expect that you guys have seen some of the other videos, or you've been kind of following how to import things into Unity, and how to like make sure that those materials come in. But I'm going to go ahead and delete these for now and just start. So the typical AR scene, remember you've got to have your package manager, you've got to have your AR core, AR kit, foundation, oops, yeah, AR kit, foundation subsystems, core XR plugin, AR kit XR plugin. You're going to delete the main camera. In fact, let me just go ahead and make a new scene here. So you don't have to. So delete the main camera, and then go ahead and add an XR, go session origin, and an XR session. And these will have the basic kind of scripts we need. They'll have the AR camera, like all that stuff. So all that's like default right now. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go in and you can take your FBX and drag it into here. Go ahead and apply those materials as we looked at. So here I just have inside outside. Um, and then I actually have the oh, and actually that makes a good point. So what I did was actually go ahead and export this separately. So just go File, Export, Selected. And one more thing too. This is the actual file that I used. You can see I actually got rid of the floor on the outside wrapper. I would go ahead and rotate that. You want to rotate it negative 90 degrees in the X because of the way Unity imports things. It's just gonna make it work better when you do the import. And the same thing with the with the frame. So take a step back here. Um, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and draw. I'm gonna hide this for now. Hide this rectangle here. I guess I could just click that. Go into my splines. I'm gonna draw a line across the threshold here, and I'm gonna go in and turn this back on here and select everything and make it a group. And this will all be clear in a minute here. And then I'm going to, so for the group, everything's grouped together, so it all moves. I'm going to go ahead and go to the hierarchy. I'm going to move the pivot, which is actually the rotation moment for everything. I'm going to go to snaps, right click on that, and I'm going to go from the pivot to midpoint snap. That's it. And I'm going to click and drag that. And oh, and I've got axis constraints turned on. Let me turn that off. Go to options, turn off axis constraints. And see that lights up, and you're just going to drag it there. Now the pivot is actually the center of the door. And that's important because like in Unity, we're going to want that to be kind of 0, 0, 0. And so what we're going to do is we're going to right click on transform, and we're going to change the world coordinates of everything to 0. And if I turn the grid back on, if I just press G, you'll see that that's actually where that is. And then the last thing we do is go to rotate, and then we're going to do a negative 90 X. And actually, I'm going to make sure again that this is going back to the 0. Okay, there you go. And again, it's a little weird thing that Unity like wants you to do, but that's gonna help. And then from here, you can just go ahead and take group and say a group, and then delete that line there. So now you've got everything kind of lined up here. You've got your box, and if I wanted to make it the same, as I would go in and go to mesh, delete that bottom there. Okay, and so this is the actual file that I took and I imported. You can see the door is kind of offset. But you can see how everything's on the grid, you know, front of the door. So that's going to give you exactly what's in the scene if you open up the files that I gave you. That's what that looks like. So I have an inside, I have an outside, right? And then I had a separate file that had the frame, but you can just go ahead and just export. Just go File, Export, Selected for that frame. Sorry. Um, so yeah, for my prefabs, I put one in there. I called it door target, and I had one in there that's called room test. And the room has an inside and an outside material. And the key here is, you know, when you import things, you're going to extract the textures, extract the materials, like in the previous video. And then when you go into the materials, you're going to take that outside material and you're going to change the shader and just type in, you know, VR or you type in occlusion, and then just add that shader. And then that material will basically disappear. And that's what you want. When you go into the prefabs, you look at that now, you can see that the one piece is actually invisible, and then all you see is the room. If you double click on, oops, that's not what I wanted. Oh, that's the Microsoft viewer that doesn't really do anything for me. Go to the inspector here. Yeah, so you can see it's basically invisible. That's what we want. We want to hide that with like a shroud. Okay, and that's how that effect works. Okay, and so then what we're gonna do is go ahead and take that box. Actually, I guess start with a frame. And the frame has a material, and you could just think it's actually got, yeah, it's already got like a bright material on it. If you have that yellow material, go ahead, like toss that on there or whatever. Um, anyway, so there's that, and so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take that um, prefab, and I'm gonna spawn it. So I'm just gonna drag it into the thing here. That's fine. I'm gonna apply it. Okay. And if it's not, in this case, actually, if it's not rotated correctly, what you can do is just get rid of that. See, that's what I mean, though. The -90 comes in like that. Let me go ahead and let's see here. I'm gonna zero it in the X, and I'm gonna zero it in the Z, and then because of the way the center is on that piece, I am going to click on that. There we go. Let's just see what that looks like. Okay. Yeah, so what I would do is take half of that height, so it's like 1.016, and that will put it on the ground because it's half the height of the door. Okay. Okay. Now what we got to do is get it into a position where the camera can see it. And what I did in my house was I figured out how far away I can stand from it, which is maybe like 6 feet. You want it to fill the phone screen, but you don't want it to be too far away or too close, right? And so what you're gonna do is you can see the axes here. So the green is the Y, and then the X is the red, and the Z is the blue. And the blue is the one I want. And so for the Z, you might assume maybe 2 meters, away from that camera might be the thing. And then the other thing you want to do is you can go to the AR camera here, and you can see what you're gonna see there. I would also estimate the height at which you are going to be holding the camera, or like the average person, and it might be something like 40 inches or like something like that. And so you might say like 1.25. Oh, that's the wrong dimension there. I moved that away there. Go in the Y there. So maybe 1.25 meters, or like 1 meter, something like that. So could do that. And if you don't get it in the frame, you could still move that door even further back. So just call it 2.25 or something like that. There you go. So that's pretty close to what I had. And so that assumes, again, that the door is on the ground, and that you have a camera that's approximately a meter off the ground, and maybe, again, 2.25 meters away. So you just kind of do your math there. If you look at it, let me get the view there. Yeah. So this is kind of what this is assuming. It's not a great system, it's because it doesn't account for any angles or anything like that. We'll look at another method later, but this is a method that I found that requires a little bit less calculation, and it gets a pretty good effect. If you get it like square, it works pretty well. Okay, so you got the door target. I'm going to right click this, and I'm going to go ahead and say unpack prefab. And the reason for that is you can see before it had kind of a blue symbol. We can't really script a prefab. We can't really control it. And in order to actually control it programmatically, we have to actually unpack it to the scene. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to go ahead and drag it under for the AR camera. And what that does is that makes it a child of the camera. And what that means is that if I move the camera, it's actually joined to it. And that's exactly what we want. If we don't do that, then when we run the app, it's just going to stay exactly where it was, and it's not going to allow us to target our virtual room, and that's no good. That's not going to work. Okay. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I got my room all kind of worked out, and I'm going to go ahead and spawn it in the scene. And you can actually see that the rotation's off on this one too. And so um, this may or may not be necessary. Just depends on, I don't know, depends on your settings, I suppose. But I don't know. Earlier, I found that I needed to change that rotation. If that's not gonna work or whatever, it's pretty easy to fix. I'm gonna go ahead and let me just make sure that I've got the right side of it. Yep. Okay, and then turn it around 180 degrees on the Z. Yeah, and I realize I'm probably making more work for everybody. Okay, and then go ahead and zero that. And the Y, remember again, was like 1.016, and the Z is right there. And of course, we did move it, and you'll probably want to move it just a little bit behind that frame so that there's a difference in those two. and you can kind of halfway eyeball it, and that'll get you kind of what I had in the other scene. And you can, and so again, go to room test, and you want to go ahead and say unpack prefab, make that a child of the AR camera. And so what we're gonna do is, when you run the scene, you're gonna move the camera around, until you get that aligned with your door, and then the script is gonna kick in, and when you tap the screen, it's gonna hide this object. I mean the frame object, right, the rectangle, and it's going, sorry, no, the door target, and then it's going to make a copy of this space. And we'll look at that in a minute. When the script runs, this is actually not going to be rendering. Like, you won't actually, all you'll see is the frame. And because of the way this all works, we're not actually able to just turn this one thing off and not turn the other one off, because we want to basically make it so that now we can walk around in it without it being locked to the camera. And so we have to make a copy of this. Otherwise, it's going to stay with us. Okay. So again, we're going to walk around with this frame, but it's also going to be taking the room with it, and it's going to be hidden. And then when we tap the screen, it's going to turn off both of these and make a copy of this that's not parented to the camera. Okay, are you with me there? Okay, so to make that work, we're going to go into the AR session. I go to my script here, and I've got this door frame script, and so I'm just going to go ahead and drag that to the bottom here, and then it wants a target frame, which is that. Drag that in there, and a spawned model, which we also happen to have, and now it's happy. And basically, if you would compile that, that's going to give you what I showed you in the demo. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and open up that script and kind of show you what's happening. So just stay tuned here. Okay, so we're in Visual Studio, and this is pretty similar, again, to the other video that I had, but I just want to go through it. Here you've got all of your AR objects that you need. Excuse me. And this is just so it can talk to the right pieces of code. So all of the AR like libraries. We have the door frame placement controller. There's an object that we're going to use to place the room in when we spawn it. There's the frame we use, and then there's the model that we actually start with. That's the one that's called spawned model. And so what we do is right away when the script starts, we're gonna go in and get into the children objects of that, and we're basically going to turn off the rendering, and that's what's going to hide it. That's what's going to make it so that all we see is the frame. The spawned model is there. It's being moved around and transformed by the camera that you move with your phone, but it's not showing up. It's not going to be rendered. And the reason why we can't just turn off the model is because if you look at it, if you actually open up, it has children of its own, and so these need to be turned off. You can't just turn, for some reason, I don't know why, you can't just turn this off. You actually have to go into this object and then turn off the geometry that's actually inside of its children. And the one object is the object that's hiding it, and the other one is the object that's inside of it, right? And so that's just a thing we have to deal with. Okay, and then when the app starts, it's looking for a touch input. When you touch the phone, it creates a copy. It instantiates the model at that position and the transform rotation that you've defined with your phone. And it calls that object spawned object one. And now that is the only object that we care about at this point. That's everything in the room that you created, all that geometry, right? Um, and then what it does is it briefly, uh, well, it's going to go in and turn on the rendering for that. So just to make sure that we can see it now, it makes a copy of it and make sure that we can see it, because the copy that it made was actually not rendering. And then it destroys or like removes that original frame, and it removes the model that this was actually based on. And that's it. That's all that it does. Very simple. So, um, the key for this again is, having it be attached to the camera, so you have the frame, having the occlusion material, so that when you're looking at it in your space, you don't see anything of it, And indeed, when you're inside the space, you don't see anything until you walk outside of it, which is really a nice effect. Um, you're just gonna carry this with you until you're ready, and then you press the button, and now you have access to that room. So that creates a nice kind of portal effect. The thing you have to watch out for, and you see it like in my video here, just with this method, is that this is currently like straight up and down, and you have to be very careful about what height you hold your phone. Um, if that is not really working well for you, you may consider slightly angling the camera, like the AR camera, or changing the parameters slightly. It's not a perfect method. There might even be a thing where you could access the accelerometer in your phone and use it to kind of control the pitch of the camera or something like that, and actually have it change this. Um, that's really beyond the scope of what I'm trying to do right now. But in terms of like not using plane detection, which can have its own problems, this is kind of like a method that works reasonably well, and will get you a pretty good effect without a whole lot. And it's a very small script. It's not even actually looking at any of the other AR system components or anything like that. So something to try. But hopefully that'll get you a little bit further if you're trying to like accomplish like a portal effect, without plane detection. Okay, I have the files posted. You guys can like take a look at those. They're going to be basically the same structure that I have in the Unity file for now. I might go back and clean them up later. But again, that should get you a sense of how to make this virtual room work, and then you can kind of play with like what's going on in here. All right, good luck. I'll talk to you later.